Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons because I usually do, but also too because the channel is called HowtoDandD. So we're talking about the book, Boo's Astral Menagerie. This is part of the Spelljammer Adventures in Space series. It's that box set that we are all sort of wondering about whether we should buy or not. And this is I would say the second book in the series. I think the last book I consider to be the adventure. In any case, that's beside the point. Let's have a talk about this particular book and what it has to offer. As far as I'm concerned, there are some surprises in here, and there's some things I don't like. Like everything that I have to say about a book, there's usually some good and some bad. Okay, so please take it with a grain of salt. So obviously we have our cover. I think the standard cover is better than the alternative cover, in my opinion. I don't find myself drawn to the alternative covers, frankly. I mean, whether that's the right way to think or the wrong way to think, I don't know that really matters. But for me, I prefer the standard cover. Okay, so we have a contents page. The contents page pretty much does everything that an index would. So I don't feel like this book needed to have an index for those of you who are wondering about that. So I'm not worried about there not being an index at all because they do have a good contents page. What I will say in terms of the book tools, there are some book tools here. This is a very small book, so you don't have a lot of space to actually work with. The stat blocks by challenge rating is kind of pointless in my opinion. I think it's actually a waste of very limited book space. It might be useful for a beginner dungeon master, but ultimately, because there's so few monsters in here, I don't think it was necessary in the first place. There's also a couple of pages designated for the astral encounter tables. I don't think they're needed either. It's basically just a list of monsters generally. There's a couple of times where there's sort of like an interesting suggestion or encounter idea presented, but the vast majority are just lists of monsters. And you don't really need that when you're playing the game. I mean, as a dungeon master, we can make up lists ourselves. Now, again, this might be a tool that a beginner dungeon master would use, but I don't think that it really helps a dungeon master, frankly. Okay, I'm going to go through each monster bit by bit and tell you what I sort of have to say about them. The Turk, or is it Turks? I think it's Turks. Turks, something like that. Basically, this is an intelligent star-shaped plant with a very shallow background, frankly. I was kind of a bit disappointed. It's been poached from Day of the Triffids, if you weren't aware. If you're aware of that particular mini-series or the movies or the TV series, Day of the Triffids is pretty well known. The special powers of the Turk include spider climb, casting spells, aggressive French kissing apparently, and spitting microwave energy. I didn't see that coming. Mechanically, I think it's a mixed bag of strong, being quite strong for its challenge rating, frankly, and being reasonable. I am glad to see a monster that sort of sits within the realm of being about right to being a little bit more powerful than that, rather than being weaker. But I did know that they do have some very low DCs for some of the spell casting and that tongue attack, you know, the French kiss thing that I was talking about. So I was a bit disappointed by that fact. One of the things I did notice, it's very hard for me to comment on the mathematics of this book, frankly. I was going to do it, and in the end I decided to give up because it was too hard, frankly. I didn't think it was going to be possible. The next one, we have the Astral Elves. These are space elves. They have a detailed origin story, as far as I can tell, but I feel like it's a very boring origin story. Maybe that's just me, personal preference. As expected, the Astral Elves do elf stuff like cast spells, teleport. They zap idiots that get in their way, and with radiation, that is. And they may summon, if you're really unlucky, a very angry solar dragon, which, frankly, you don't want to deal with. Mechanically, I think these are a bit of a mess. I would say generally very weak in terms of attack bonuses and damage output. Other than that, that's the only sort of flaw I saw. I'm not going to comment on the mechanics of every single stat block or every single monster, by the way. Autonomes are mechanical gnomes with a story weaker than the movie RoboCop. I don't think that they're not cool. I like the idea of them, but the story behind them is pretty weak. The Autonome shocks your murder hobos and says really cute one-liners when it malfunctions. It feels like a sort of a mini Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator, but just with the cuteness factor turned up. We also have the Braxit. I don't know. I am still trying to see that word, and is that actually a word? Braxit is an armor-plated bipedal dinosaur, not related to the purple dinosaur Barney. The Braxit suffers from some sort of acidic bad breath and can cast spells. I didn't see that one coming, and has its own energy field generator. Okay, psionic field, shield, one of those. It felt like that's what I had to say. Okay, Broax. Is it a Broax? I don't know. I mean, it's a giant, right? It's a Broax's a giant. I mean, we had to have a giant, and of course, if it's a space giant, like what would you do? You'd make it orange. So this is an orange-skinned giant with 4 arms that speaks in sign language and has no lore about its history whatsoever. The awesome special feature, though, is hideous render that rips the victim into 4 pieces when they fall to 0 hit points. I am so happy to see something like this. We actually have a scary monster here. Like, this is the sort of monster that will screw up your players big time. Will they cry if they lose their character and have to go and get reincarnated? Because probably Raise Dead isn't going to work, but reincarnate, you might get away with that. I didn't see that one coming. I always considered a lot of the things that Wizards of the Coast do to be quite tame. This is not tame. This is pretty brutal. Like that's cool. Chewanga astronauts. These are like space traveling elemental spirits with a really wild hairstyle, as far as I can tell. They avoid everyone and will really be encountered. So I don't know when you're going to get to use them. These slippery magical spellcasters are begging to bestow magical gifts on travelers and help travelers out. If they can actually deal with their big person anxiety and complexes, because I don't think they want to actually have too much to do with anybody, yet they want to help. That seems to be what they're designed for. Essentially, their stat block looks like that. In any case, interesting. Next one. The Cosmic Horror is a colossal far realm octopus, basically, that slipped into the astral plane, and it's basically been ripped from Cthulhu fiction by Lovecraft. The strange ability for the Cosmic Horror consists of teleportation, a very frisky tentacle attack, farting, and whispering horror stories to you. So, yeah, it's a good time. The Dowa, is it Dowa? Basically, these are secret merchant penguins. It's a penguin. It's a secret merchant penguin that acts like a spy when they have nothing to actually hide. Maybe there's a government analogy here. I'm not too sure. The powers of the Dowa are all about the mind, with really less flash than Professor X. You get telepathy, you get detect thoughts, and you get a very gentle nibble attack if you need to do anything with that. The aesthetic. Is it an aesthetic? And basically it's a jelly creature. You know, this is a giant jellyfish spaceship created by the Riga that dissolve other creatures. And of course they fly through space, wild space, the astral sea. But yeah, you don't want to actually have to contend with them. They're not nice. The unusual skills for the aesthetic are they have tentacle wrestling. There's a lot of tentacle wrestling and tentacles in Spelljammer, apparently. With a very painful gooey squeeze and a warp drive sabotage ability, apparently. I don't hate this creature. Okay, it's fine. I do like it. It's different. It's jellyfish, giant jellyfish in space. Why not? The Eyemonger is a sentient, single-eyed asteroid that swallows creatures and talks to rocks. I think that's what they were trying to communicate to me. Surprisingly, this stone-shaped critter is related to a beholder because it prefers to actually a diet of spellcasters. Like, it prefers to eat them because its gut has an anti-magic field inside. So once they swallow the spellcaster, there's really nothing that a spellcaster can do because it's going to get digested very quickly, and they've got no way of using their most useful tool, which is magic. Yes, it looks really goofy, I know, I'm aware. The Faya. Is it Faya? Is it a Fa creature? It's a Faya, something like that. It has many eyes. It's a tentacled beach ball, basically, that feeds on nightmares with a receding gum, or a receding gum line, as far as I can tell. So they've obviously been brushing too hard, and the gums are receding. The Faya like to be invisible while strangling a chew toy. So basically, you are a chew toy for them, but they're not necessarily going to kill you, I think. And they will buffet you with their tentacles, of course, while scaring the victim. And what are they really trying to do? It's like the Matrix. They're trying to turn their victim into a biological battery. They feed on fear. So it's probably to their advantage to just keep coming back every night and sucking more of your fear up. It's a monster I've seen before. I was tempted to actually talk about this monster in the past, but I haven't got there, so we'll see how we go. But I do know that AJ Pickett has a very good video on the topic, and you'll probably get far more from that video than this particular book. Gayjack? Is it Gayjack? I think it's Gayjack. Gayjack. It's a gigantic, intelligent New Zealand weta, as far as I can tell, that understands all languages, but is mute, so it won't matter that it understands languages because it still can't talk to anybody. The favourite pastime of the Gayjack is, of course, probing a meat sack's mind while chewing off limbs with their mandibles. Yep. Okay, look, if you're going to make any kind of creature that's real into a full-blown monster for Dungeons & Dragons, I think the New Zealand weta is a good example, and this certainly looks like a New Zealand weta to me, or it's certainly similar in many respects. Okay, next, the Geth. The Geth are a snobby, space-faring, hippo-skilled creature with very impressive gun skills. There's no evolutionary background here. That doesn't mean that the Geth don't have any kind of background or story behind them, but there's not much in this book. Shooting living things is what they do best with muskets. They have specialized muskets to do all sorts of things, and they like to blow shit up with bombs. Basically, that's the Geth. The Geth Yankee has minimal lore in this book, and it refers the reader to the Monster Manual and the Monsters of the Multiverse book. So if you expected to see, I mean, there's words there, but it's not really going to tell you much about the Geth Yankee. The Geth Yankee specialise in spellcasting, teleportation, blasting problems with brute force. Basically, that's what they do best. And contending with all of the nasty things in the astral plane and astral sea that have caused them problems over the years. And we're talking about mind flayers and various other creatures. Okay, one of my favourite creatures in this book, and there's not a lot on it in this book, unfortunately, the Hadozi. It's a flying space monkey with missing lore due to social media outrage. Look, I'm not going to comment on the social media outrage other than to say I don't get it, okay? Clearly, the Hadozi are based on the flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz. So if you have a problem with the Wizard of Oz, you have a problem with the Hadozi. Or do you have a problem with the Hadozi and then you follow up and you have a problem with the Wizard of Oz? The special features of the Hadozi are similar to a cat, where they can land on their feet unharmed, dodge, throw in shoes, and escape the grasp of an excited toddler. That seems to be the extent of their special features as far as I can tell. I still like this as a spacefaring creature. I like them. I like the original story that I read in Monsters of the Multiverse before they changed it to. The Jammer Leech attaches itself to the hull of a Spelljammer ship to feed off the magic. It has excellent information on its biology, its life cycle, and its habitat. I was really impressed with this particular entry. I think this is one of the stronger entries here, and I'm fine with having a leech that operates this way. a good job, Wizards of the Coast. You did yourself a service by actually doing something decent with this thing. The next one is the Kandori. I think it's the Kandori. They are massive space humpback whales with no mouth and a blinding spotlight power. Basically, they have little spotlights on them, and they can use those spotlights to do things to you. It has a really good biological explanation, but no origin whatsoever as far as I can tell here. The Kandori, it's basically been poached, I believe, from Disney's Fantasia animated movie with the flying whales. I mean, it's pretty obvious where it came from. If you're not familiar with the Fantasia animated movie, you should go and watch it. It's a great time. It's very musical. It's not the kind of normal Disney thing. And it was very popular. So I think that's where it came from. The lunar dragon lives in a lair by burrowing into a desolate moon to raise its young dragons and deprive creatures of their treasures. That seems about right. Yep. It has very basic habitat information and ecology. You can probably get a lot more from a particular YouTube channel. I would suspect that AJ Pickett has probably just about covered all of the dragons by now. The lunar dragon can become a ghostly being with really fresh, minty breath that will turn you into an ice block. Like it'll freeze you solid if you're not careful. I like the idea of this creature. I just don't feel like there's enough story behind it to make it easy for me to include into an adventure. Right, so there's a couple of different versions of it, by the way. So you get your wormling, your young, your adult, and your ancient. The Megaped is an enormous centipede that carries eggs. It has tiny lore entry there. I mean, it's very small, non-existent evolutionary stories or story behind it. It just really describes what this thing does. The special property of the Megaped is that it sucks out the life energy if you get too friendly with it, and it tries to blow up a victim's mind. I mean, that's essentially what it does. The next one is actually the Mercane, an ancient blue technology and magic item merchant that dresses in a robe that communicates with a hive mind. But we don't know where it came from, apparently, because there's no information about that. The original, I think this is basically the original arcane creature from Spelljammer or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. If you are aware of the arcane, it looks very much like that as far as I can tell. I think it just got a name change. I don't know why they would change the name, but they appear to have done so. The Mercane casts spells that are sort of psionic spells, or are they really psionic? They just look like spells to me. They've just got the word psionic there. Does that make it psionic? I suppose it does. And they wield a fancy blade. They have a fancy blade with them. Murder comets are a flaming, screaming stone face created by an evil spellcaster to create havoc. I mean, essentially, I think that's basically a throw a spanner in the works and cause untold strife for everybody, which I'm fine with. I don't have an issue with that at all. This monster is a guided missile that spits fire and explodes, and it kind of makes it a true murdering rock. I mean, I think if you want this to do bad things to your player characters, this will certainly do it. I'm going to have trouble with this one. The Nethrogi, my god, is that a real word? I can't get my tongue around it. It's basically a crab-like brain collector born in the far realm whose background and behavior is wonderfully terrible. I think this is one of the coolest monsters I've seen. It's a powerful spellcaster that it can extract, cook, and eat your brain in no time whatsoever at all. Like it'll pull it out, give it a good cook, microwave it, and then eat it, and she's all good. It's like barbecue time with your brain. The Neogi. This is an evil, intelligent, oversized, long-necked spider monster that enslaves all beings with gruesome... It's got a really gruesome origin and purpose, which makes it kind of your skin crawl. When I read this and the entry that they provided, I was actually surprised because I think what they've done is they've snuck a lot of lore into here, even though the entries are supposed to be about the stat blocks. There's actually very little about the specific differentiation between the stat blocks, what they've done is somebody's clearly snuck in the information we really wanted, which was the story about the Neogi in general. Only the Neogi Void Hunter has cool spells and mind-controlling powers, unfortunately. The rest are pretty basic. They're not doing very much as far as I can tell. Plasmoids. Plasmoids, it's a big favourite for people. They are intelligent ooze with a well-developed biology and reproduction process. I was really impressed by the information provided for that. It was very good. You can squeeze the plasmoid into all the wrong cracks if you want to, while it holds its breath for a very long time and then slams you with a slimy fist. So yes, a fun time. And yes, it can use weapons if it really wants to, but will it want to do that? The Purcellon, I think it's the Purcellon, they're super intelligent spellcasting carnivores. It's basically a horse worm, or a worm horse, whose goal is to make the universe their banquet. Occasionally you get a mutant that has 2 worm heads. I like those the most. This weird monster serves psychic brain-crushing juice to explorers. Like it's really about crushing your brain juice out. I think that's what we were trying to do here with this creature. I'm all for that. It sounds good to me. The Riga. These are rainbow people caught in a paradox, as far as I can tell after reading their entry. Just back from a street parade, possibly, that have built-in nightlights. Not my favourite creature, frankly. I think the original concept behind it, I love the idea, but once I see the after effect of like what they actually look like when they're in this form, it's not my favourite. Casting spells, spinning forks or tridents, summoning golems, and controlling flying jellyfish really separates the Riga from the other astral navigators that we get. Well, does it? Yes, I suppose it does. Okay. Is it a Skavers? Skavers are flying Cyclops sharks with spikes and a headlight, as far as I can tell. The Skaver will chomp on your body and bones, swallow a creature whole, and the Void Skavers actually project fear into your mind, because you should fear sharks. And this is basically a space shark. If you hadn't figured it out, it is a space shark. Okay, very cool monster. I love this. Terrifying in every respect. Solar dragons. They're serpent-like behemoths with a nebulous gleaming wing, or wings, that have, I mean, it's definitely got to have a Godzilla atomic breath, as far as I can tell. And it lives near stars. And it was born in a star. Great. Awesome. We want that. Its special abilities or actions for the solar dragon are bad breath, which will vaporize your character, or blind them with a superior high beam. Like if you get high beamed at night when you're driving at night, like this is going to be much worse. There's a couple of different versions. So you get the wormling, the young, the adult, and the ancient, for those of you who don't know. That's there. You get all of them stat blocks you want. A lot of stat blocks. Space clowns. These are evil flesh-eating carnival performers jacked up on drugs that wield paint guns, as far as I can tell. This bizarre monster is from the old horror movie, I believe, The Killer Clowns from Outer Space, from 1988. I kind of like the fact that they exist. Space clowns use magic to take part in performing pranks, deceiving, and butchering their audience. Then they explode and pop like a balloon. Even though they kind of look a bit strange, when you look at what they can do and the lore behind them, which is fairly minimal, I think we can watch the movie and probably get a bit more information. They are horrendous. I kind of really like the space clowns. Even though they come off as being goofy, they're pretty terrifying if you ask me. The next one, we get space eels. Space eels, they are basically a flying multi-eyed purple eel. There's nothing else to mention about this. I mean, we could say it has a bite and a spine tail thingy going on, but yeah, I'm not that excited. We get space guppies, which is basically a gold flying space fish with multiple eyes. Like it's a goldfish that flies with multiple eyes. Did we need this? Do we frankly need a stat block for this? It's got a challenge rating of 0. Who's going to use this? Do we really want to face a space eel in a combat? Could you just not tell us that we have in the Astral Sea, we have eels, fish, whales, and various other things. They don't actually need to be a combat monster. They could just be mentioned. Give us a paragraph. Give us something else. I would have preferred that. I'm not fond of these ones. Okay, I'm not fond. Giant space hamsters. These are smart, telepathic, cute, and furry space rodents created by wizards again. Apparently, wizards do a lot of creating. The space hamster go for the eyes, of course, because they know that blind creatures can't eat them because they are not that big. They're pretty small. And so they make sort of like a nice hors d'oeuvre. So they have to blind you. Go for the eyes. Look, if you're going to have Spelljammer and you're going to have monsters, you probably do need to have some information on space hamsters and giant space hamsters, because it's kind of part of the whole trope and ethos. The whole theme behind Spelljammer is, we're going to have these. We have Space Mollymock. A Space Mollymock, it's basically an albatross or a seabird. And yeah, that's right. You saw it. At this point, I think the design team need a good spanking for putting this stuff in here. It's challenge rating 0. Why are we going to need to do this? We can just tell them that they exist. You've got albatross in your Astral Sea in wild space that fly around. Anyway, we have space swine. This is actually, the space swine is inspired by the Muppet Show's Pigs in Space on steroids. Like, I think Chris Perkins must have made this up while eating some magic mushrooms himself, because it's kind of silly. It's got a low challenge rating. You're not really going to, you might ride it, you might eat it. It's really not going to be a fight. It's got a little bit of a bite. It might nibble on you a little bit, but that's really about it. You're going to be attacked by flying pigs. Come on. Yeah. All right. Anyway, you can see I'm not a huge fan of that particular creature. Look, I can't be a fan of everything, people. I can only be a fan of the things that I like. And so, yeah, this is going to be a little bit biased. I did warn you that you needed to take everything I say with a grain of salt, or a grain of something. The Sauron are space lizards. Sauron, space lizard folk. Space lizard folk. That's right, we get space lizard folk. There's no lore. There's no habitat information. There's no ecology. No tactics, no origin story at all. There's nothing. Like there's text words there, but there's nothing. And I thought, aren't psionic powers and defiling from the Sauron a specialist ability that they have from Dark Sun? Isn't this creature from Dark Sun, and now it's here? I do feel like maybe Dark Sun is getting Deep Six. Not really surprised by that. But yeah, do we need them here? Were they worth saving? Could we not have put something else here? Because yeah, we get 2 big stat blocks, a bit of artwork, and nothing that really tells us anything, frankly. Starlight Apparition. These are sort of a spectral copy of souls who died in space that serve as guides sent by a deity. It's a ghost mechanically with radioactivity. If you hadn't figured it out, that's basically what it is. Mechanically, it's a ghost, and it's radioactive. Next, we have the Thicreen. These are intelligent carnivores. It's basically a cockroach humanoid that communicates with sign language and telepathy. These critters do it all. Like, they leap, they parry, they hide, they drain life force, they cast spells, and they hit you with a kitchen sink. Like, literally, they can hit you with very much, like everything. They've got a lot of arms, if you hadn't noticed. They've got multiple arms, actually. I actually like the Thicreen. Again, I do feel like this is being pulled from Dark Sun and placed into Spelljammer. I do believe there was another insect creature that wasn't the Thicreen that existed in the Spelljammer campaign world, but apparently Thicreen are here. I don't mind so much because I like the Thicreen. Okay, they've always been a fun monster to include. Vampirates. These are vampires turned, or should I say, these are pirates turned vampires rather than vampires turned pirates. Although I suppose it both could work. They feed on a creature's energy, a bit like the old horror science fiction movie called Life Force. If you ever saw that movie, where basically vampires are land or are in a spaceship and they find that the crew is all but dead apart from one individual, and then on there is a whole lot of people they don't know who the heck they are, and they just happen to be vampires that suck out your life force. They don't suck your blood. They don't need to do that. These are kind of a bit like that. The vampire captain is clearly based on the character John Silver, the cyborg from the movie Treasure Planet. I think Treasure Planet had a big impact on the designers here. Vampirates have all of the best toys to play with. When I looked at the different things that they could do, they kind of do everything, and they're fun. Yeah, I like the Vampirates. Our last monster here is the Zodar. Zodar is basically an armored flying bipedal tank that casts the wish spell. Like, we have a monster that casts the wish spell. Oh yeah. Which would create, like, they're apparently created by an unknown entity to do something that no one understands. Like, that's very confusing. If I had to sum up the Zodar, I would say these are Space Knight Genies. That's right, it's a Space Knight Genie. So how do you feel about being forced to teleport into the Zodar's crushing fists and then have it reduce the party to the size of a snail or into actual snails or slugs with the wish spell, or simply just disintegrate you or make you cease to exist, like do a Thanos snap and you are just ash. Like, this thing could do that. Of course, it will be, once it casts the wish spell, it will be ash itself, because that's destroyed when it uses that particular feature, which I have no problem with. I actually kind of like that idea. So, look, there's some stuff in here that's good. There's some stuff that I don't like quite so much in terms of what's in the book. But there's a couple of things I'm going to say in terms of sort of an overview or summary of this book, because there are some things I would like to point out. And I think the first thing I need to say about a book like this is I don't have a problem with the size of the book. I actually don't have a problem with the size of the book. The size of the book is not the issue. I think the front cover illustration of Minsc and Boo riding on a solar dragon is fine, but it does suit a much younger audience rather than the people who first were introduced to Spelljammer through Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I think that the older audience will struggle to contend with what they see here in terms of some of the artwork, particularly the front cover, because it does look very cartoony. And I understand if you don't like that. It's still fun. The artwork is a mixed bag of kind of wacky kids' cartoons. There are some incomplete conceptual artwork here as well, and some very excellent creepy illustrations. Stuff that I really did enjoy, I did like. I would say that the 10 horrifying and bizarre monsters created for the Spelljammer Compendium for Dungeons & Dragons 5e on D&D Beyond should have been in this book. And the more silly or boring creatures that don't do very much and have like a challenge rating of 0 should have probably been excluded, because there were 10 monsters that were pretty good in that compendium, and they're not in this book, and I wish they were. The book overall is very expensive for less than a stellar product. I don't think that necessarily for the price you're paying that it's necessarily worth a purchase. But then again, if you've never been exposed to Spelljammer, you may not mind that too much. I don't recommend this book as a purchase, frankly. I think that you could probably do better by purchasing something off Drive-Thru RPG that's a bit older, and it might not have stat blocks for it, but it's going to have a lot more story stuff with it, and you'll get a lot more. I'm not saying that the Spelljammer Monstrous Compendium was huge, but I still feel like you would have done better to get a product like that. So yeah, kind of a bit hit and miss as far as I'm concerned. Look, all I want to say is, like, if you liked this, great. If you found this useful, me flipping through, talking about the different monsters, fantastic. If you have any comments you would like to make, any questions that you have, please put them in the comments section. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.